I collected information for my recent video, one thing stood out, which was that the Formless Mother has connections to serpents and by extension fire. And we all know that when it comes to fire, one of the easiest places to find it is the Volcano Manor and the Mountaintops of the Giants. What's interesting is that these two locations have the names or the titles mountains associated to them. So for those who don't know, Volcano Manor is actually sitting on a mountain, because that's where we find Mount Gilmer, right? So that is where we find Volcano Manor. And then we also have the Mountaintops of the Giants, where we actually have the Forge of the Giants, right? The Fire Forge of the Giants, which I'm using this red highlighter to highlight. But to give you a more video or cinematic view, this is a video I took for Volcano Manor, and you see that there's lava going on. So it's almost as if, as the name suggests, there's an active volcano really there. And what do we find there? We find a serpent, who is what? Rykard. I've already delved into that, so I'm not gonna do that here. And here is the Mountaintops of the Giants, right? So in the Mountaintops, or at the Mountaintops of the Giants, we also have the Giant Forge, which has what? Fire. So once I made these connections, I was like, there's something interesting going on. Both locations are mountains or are mountainous, and both locations also have fire. And I know that wherever I see fire, from what I have recently discovered, the serpent has something to do with it in most cases, let me put it that way. So this led me to start looking at some of the history behind the Mountaintops of the Giants. And what I learned is that as far as the history of the Mountaintops goes, there have been two main wars fought on the Mountaintops of the Giants. The first one is the war fought between the Ice Dragons and the Fire Giants. And what's really interesting is that there seem to be a play on words here, but what actually happened is that the Ice Giants were the Ice Dragons were the former occupants of the peak, right, the topmost parts of the mountaintops. And what happened is that the Fire Giants chased them away, as we can see from the item description for Borealis Mist. But it's interesting to notice this, because if you look at the words carefully, and I've highlighted two words here, ice and fire, you realize that it's basically these divergent forces, right? Ice for the Ice Giants and fire, the Ice Dragons, and fire for the Fire Giants. So these opposite forces of hot and cold had a battle, and apparently fire won. And if you are conversant with or familiar with George R.R. Martin's works, he actually uses this concept of ice and fire like very well. I think in Game of Thrones, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong from the chat, there seem to be this concept of ice and fire. And in my recent video, I also talked about blood and fire, which he uses again in one of his prequel to the Game of Thrones. But anyway, I diverge. So this was the first battle that was fought, and of course it was interesting that the game developers left Borealis in the game. You can actually fight him as you see here at the frozen lake on the Mountaintops of the Giants. And at least they left him there for us to get a glimpse or an idea of what is really going on with this dude. But anyway, let's not spend so much time on this guy. And so we go back to the Fire Giants, because remember, our focus is not ice, it's fire. Because as I said, if we trace the fire very well, we'll come to a conclusion that there's some serpentine action also going on. So basically, we need to ask ourselves some questions, right? Which is that, where did the fire giants get their fire from? Of course, the game tells us that, oh, they got it from the one-eyed fell god. But what is really the nature of the one-eyed fell god, right? Is he humanoid? Is he some sort of monstrosity? I mean, your guess probably is as best as mine at this point, until maybe we go through the rest of the video and you see what I arrived at. But it's interesting, they usually depict the fell god with this one eye, right? And the one eye shield tells us the same story. Everything is about one eye when we come to the fell god. So one eye fire. But it's not only the fell god that actually has all this one eye stuff going on. We have other characters in the game who I will get to. At least I will look at one. But still on the fire giants, so they had their fire. They fought with the ice dragons. The ice dragons lost the fight. Remember, I said that historically speaking, on the mountaintops of the giants, there have been 2 battles, right? And the first one was with the ice dragon. The second one was actually with Marika and her tarnished, who were led by Lord Godfrey. And that is where we see these remnants of giants who have been killed and have this sort of tree-like stuff or branch-like stuff going through them. Actually, when you take a closer look at that branch, it looks like a spear, right? It's like a 3-pronged spear, even though it looks more like a plant, like it's made of a plant. Once again, in my recent video, we did talk about the connections between the 3-pronged spear or the spear and the formless mother, as well as blood and fire. So Moog has a spear almost shaped like this. Messmer also has one, and we established that there's some connection between these people and the formless mother, and perhaps the serpent in our recent video. But so who are really the culprits? Because as far as we are concerned, these are some of the most direct or significant information left behind after the war for us to make sense of what really happened and who did what. But of course, we can narrow the culprits down to these women here, right? Because they seem to have the ability, some of them seem to have the ability to use thorn sorcery, which you find on the giants. But they also wield this, branch-like weapon, which is on flame, right? And so, yes, they could be the culprit, because number one, you find some of them, I think these ones are found around a certain castle near I think it's Mount Gilmer, yes. And then we have another group that you can also find in the consecrated snowfield area, and they are also wielding these same weapons. Actually, if you look around the environment, you see those spear-like branches that pierced the giants in the vicinity, which tells me that these ladies are actually responsible for what we witness. But it's interesting to notice this, because these are not the first people, in my opinion, to have used this type of sorcery. Indeed, we have seen something similar before, and it is no other. Oh, sorry, let me actually load the volume. I'm sorry about that. Okay, now we are good. Okay, so it's no other than our very own Messmer, right? Messmer actually uses the piercing ritual, as I call it, or should I say this sort of impaling. I think that's what the game calls it. So Messmer has the ability to impale people with a similar approach. So it means that we can actually begin to take a closer look or careful look at Messmer to draw some conclusions as well, given what I have described. So let's go back to the one-eye shield. It's intriguing to note that Messmer, interestingly, also has one eye, technically speaking, because the entire time we interact with Messmer, his one eye is shut, and it's only the one that has Marika's seal opened. So technically, Messmer, in actual fact, is also one-eyed. And is it a coincidence? Are the game developers trying to tell us something? Well, let's find out. You might say, well, Sage, this is a very, far stretch where you are, yes, there are other people in the game who have one eye. For instance, Moog has one eye because the other eye has been pierced by his horn, blah, blah, blah. Okay, no worries. But there is actually more, and we can learn more from these characters known as the, if I remember correctly, I think they are called the Gladiators, right? And they used to fight back in the days in the Colosseums. Anyone who has actually taken a closer look at these characters would agree that they are actually adorned with a lot of serpentine design, like serpentine ornaments, right? Their helmet, and then they have this serpentine, I don't know whether to call it bracelet, just around their arms. But has anyone ever taken a very close look at the guard or the armor they wear to protect their legs? So here is a very close look at it. Chat, if we look at this specific location where I have the laser or red highlighter, am I tripping, or we are actually seeing eyes? Is that an eye? Well, I think it's an eye. I believe it's an eye. This is from the Gladiator we find near the air tree, as you can see, and then this is another one from the one we find near the consecrated snowfield. So it's really an eye, right? And it's interesting that these guys have yes, okay, so RJ agrees that looks like an eye. Of course, he's not saying RJ is not saying it's an eye. RJ is saying it does look like an eye. So yep, it does look like an eye to me. And so there is also a connection between serpents and this whole thing about eye. And this eye actually does look like Level says eye and ears, snake and horns. Yep, right, exactly. So okay, we can move on. It does look like an eye. So this whole eye business, it's not really it's not something that is just only common to the fire giant fell god or one-eye fell god. We do see it here, and these dudes have serpentine connections. Well, if you don't even believe that, how about we go look at the forge of the giants, right? The fire forge of the giants in the game. So here's a closer look, right, at it. This is the handle, right? We are zooming into the handle of the fire forge. Well, my question once again, chat, is what are we looking at? Well, my guess is that we are looking at a serpent. Of course, the head looks more like another animal, so to speak, almost like a wolf with a serpentine body, or maybe even a dragon without horns. But I believe you guys will agree with me that we indeed are probably looking at a serpent. So once again, there's this connection we can draw between the serpents and the fire giants. It does exist. At first, all we all thought was that, oh, the fire giants have their flame. Their flame was quelled by Marika, and she put a giant there to take care of it so that they can never use it, blah blah blah. But I believe that what we have seen so far, right, creates or gives us the connection we need to be able to make with the giants and some sort of serpentine connection, because of all the animals or of all the designs the game developers could use. Why will they choose this one in particular, which is basically a serpent to me? But anyway, okay, so let's see. Rami is asking a question. Do you think there is a connection between Gideon? Okay, being naive more than Yes, it's interesting you are mentioning this, Remy, because when I first saw this, the first person who came to mind was Gideon. I mean, the eyes on the Gladiator's guard, like I call it leg guard. I thought of, say, Gideon because he also has this big eye on his armor piece, and I believe that's what you are referring to. And so let me see how I can put this so that I do not give the conclusion of the video before we get there. But what I can say about all this is that I feel like the lore community is missing a lot when it comes to serpents and their role in the game. I am beginning to form this theory that the serpents have always been the genesis of whatever we are going through in the game. It's almost like the serpents we see in Dark Souls, right? One is called Fret, and the other one I've forgotten what his name is actually. But they form the primordial energies that we are supposed to interact with in Dark Souls, and I believe that if there's not even a one-to-one correlation between those primordial serpents and Elden Ring, Miyazaki still borrowed or still took some elements from the Dark Souls trilogy concerning the primordial serpents, and he uses them. So the serpents are almost everywhere. Recently, Scam Mage Infa released a video, and he's also talking about these serpents. I think he even established the fact that Muriel, the pastor, actually is serpentine in nature. Causality is what links all things in a chain of relation. Regression. Yep, I agree. Yeah, exactly. Thanks, RJ, Framp, and Keith. Those two primordial serpents. And we'll get to that. That's why I was saying I'm almost jumping the gun here, but we'll get to that. Anyway, let's make progress. And yeah, I'll try as much as possible to read from the chat, read your comments, and answer. Oh, RJ said I forgot what the D&D books call them. Something like Cloud Dragons or Log Dragons. Okay. All right. Okay. Now, back to Messmer, right? Because we looked at Messmer a little bit. Messmer is the one who gave us the clue, right? Concerning the eye, the serpent, the fire, the spear. Messmer is a very interesting character. And I would encourage most of you who are interested in this serpentine lore and fire stuff to really pay attention to that dude. He has more to offer than we think. But this is Messmer's flame incantation. A casual look at this, you think, oh, it's a circle and then there is a flame in the middle. Well, actually, what I've come to realize is that it's actually a serpent which forms this circle, right? And then a flame. So a serpent, because this circle ends in what looks like a tail, and then this is the flame. And what this communicates to me is that the serpent seems to be the custodian, right? The primordial custodian of the flame that we are discussing here. If you want more evidence concerning what I'm saying, let's look at this. I don't know whether it's a shield or Messmer's emblem we find scattered across Shadow Keep. It's basically what I showed you previously that has been taken and separated into two. So here we do have the flame, and here we have this pattern, right, which is sort of I mean, it's basically a circle, but they've sort of just restructured it or rearranged it. But I believe this comprises a serpent. And why do I say this? Well, take a look at this. On the left is what we previously looked at, or what I showed you some few seconds ago. And on the right is a close-up or zoomed-in version of Messmer's base serpent. I believe you will agree with me that this pattern, right, of sort of an intertwining of the serpent is reminiscent of what we find here, right? So that is how I came to the conclusion that, yeah, this is a serpent. So Messmer basically embodies the serpentine nature and the flame nature, which is very evident in his appearance. So back to this, which is, like I said, basically a serpent coiled around the flame. And remember what we said about Keith and Keith and Frem. They are actually involved in flames when you play the Dark Souls trilogy. One is interested in continuing the era of flame, right? Wants to continue flame. Okay, the circle, so Precipita says the circle on the shield of Messmer looks like chains. Yes, it does look like chains, and I would agree, because how will I put this? I also see the serpents as also some sort of cage, some sort of chains, because depending on the decision you take concerning your allegiance to the serpent, and there's more than one serpent here, and we'll get to that in a bit, you are actually going to be caged. I have already established in most of my videos that, or at least my recent videos, that Marika did form, in my opinion, a pact with a serpentine being, and that is how she got to where she got to. I mean, that's how she ascended. So indeed, the pattern I showed could be a chain, could be chains, but also the serpents actually put you in a chain or in a cage. Okay, so we're talking about this Messmer's flame incantation, and basically I was saying that now we do understand, and I hope I've managed to convince you that yes, indeed, it's made up of a serpent coiled around a flame. This is Messmer's helmet, right? And there's something very interesting I want us to take note here. It talks about two serpents. The first one is a winged serpent, and the second one is the base serpent. Interestingly, we are being told by this item description of the helmet that the winged serpent is what keeps the base serpent at bay and holds its power in check. So without the winged serpent, the base serpent is gonna really probably do more damage than we see it do. But it's interesting, right? Because a winged serpent and a base serpent, as far as I'm concerned, the base serpent, I don't see wings on it. But the winged serpents are the serpents we easily see when we first interact with Messmer, right? The serpent that comes up close and looks at us. More on Serpents, since we were talking about the Dark Souls trilogy. This is what is known as the covetous golden serpent ring. And this is an interesting description. It says that a gold ring depicting a snake that could have been but never was a dragon. Okay, now this is getting interesting, guys. So we know what we use the covetous serpent, a golden serpent ring for those of us who have played Dark Souls 3 at least. It's to get more souls, right? If you want to get more souls, it almost acts like some of the weapons we see the women of Dominilla wield, right? Like the skull and all the rake and whatever. And if you have that, it helps you to get more runes. And runes is synonymous to souls in the Dark Souls trilogy, or is the will I say is the currency. Yes, that's the word I was looking for. Remember, the women of Dominilla are all about golden stuff, right? The golden, the festive grease. It helps you to get more runes, blah blah blah. And this is why I'm saying Miyazaki probably still borrowed from his mythos or his lore when it comes to Dark Souls, Elden Ring. He didn't just reinvent the wheel. I believe he did still rely on some of the stuff that he has. So the emphasis here is that there is a serpent that should have been a dragon, but it never happened. Well, that got me thinking, and I went searching, and I came across this dude that is just chilling somewhere in one of the caves in Elden Ring, the base game. And you would agree with me that this creature, right, has the scale reminiscent of a serpent. It has wings. Interestingly, it has developed limbs, right, hands and all that. Let's see. Someone says I don't know. Okay, I don't know if it's just me, but it seems like the audio is going. Oh, the audio is going in and out. Sorry, probably maybe I'm moving away from the microphone. Let's check this again. Can you hear me now? Is it clear? Is it stable? Before we move on. Okay, how about now? Let's try and fix this before we make progress. Can someone from the chat let me know if the sound is okay now? Okay, Remy says I can, and I'm guessing that means you can hear me loud and clear now. Okay, yeah, sorry about that, guys. Yeah, I think what happened is that probably I was moving my mouth away from the microphone from time to time. Yep. Yeah, but you can also restart YouTube just to see if that is gonna fix it. But yeah, the upload rate to here looks good. We have a lag of about 0.4%, which I think is not so bad, but I don't think it's a lag problem. Okay, you restarted and it worked. Okay. Well, YouTube is trying to get in the way, but yeah. All right. Okay, it's consistent. Okay, perfect. So let's in that case, let me just go back a little bit. Yeah, let me just go back a little bit so that maybe for those of you who could not hear me at first, if you missed anything, so you can hear it. Oh, the background music was also cutting. Okay, then that was a YouTube issue, I believe. Or yeah, because I'm playing the music from the laptop itself and it's not going through the microphone. So okay, but yeah, thanks guys for bringing this to my attention. I don't know exactly where most of you started experiencing the glitch with the voice and the music and all that, but I just went back to where we were talking about Messmer's helm. And what I was saying is that Messmer's helm gives us some very important clues. It talks about two types of serpents. One is the winged serpent and the other is the base serpent. And interestingly, the winged serpent is what keeps the base serpent in check, right? Now, for those of us who have interacted with Messmer, we know that, of course, the winged serpents are probably the small serpents that at least one of them comes and looks into the tarnished eyes, and that's where Messmer says, tarnished are you? I believe that's the winged serpent, and I believe that the base serpent does not have wings. If not, this helmet description will not try to distinguish between the two and qualify one as winged and one as base. And once I saw this, it's like it was really interesting for me to notice this. So I went doing a little bit of digging around in the base game, and I came across this before the base game stuff. Actually, I went around doing some bit of digging around the Dark Souls trilogy, or more specifically in this case Dark Souls 3. And I believe those of you who have played Dark Souls will be familiar with this covetous golden serpent ring. Basically what it does is that it allows you to acquire more souls. Souls are basically the equivalent of runes in Elden Ring. It's basically the currency in Dark Souls. That's what souls are. And it's interesting that here the item description is telling us that a gold ring depicting a snake that could have been but never was a dragon. So this snake should have been a dragon, probably through evolution or whatever, but it never was. It's gold and it has red eyes. Very interesting choices of colors, right? Now, once I noticed this, I started doing some, some checks, right? Let me put it that way. And I came across this very interesting dude. And you can find this, I've forgotten the location, but it's in one of the tunnels or like the caves in the base game, probably somewhere very close to the Altus Plateau. I'm not sure, but someone can correct me or someone can do a cross check and let us know. But look, I'm gonna play the video and look closely at this beast we have here, right? It has the skills of what I would say a serpent, right, or reminiscent of a serpent, but it also has wings, and for some reason it's also developed limbs. That is what it's using to hold this. I think this is known as it's one of the dragons we fight, right? It's almost like a dragon that never was. Now this gives me the impression that there seem to be some evolution, right, that has occurred, because remember the covetous serpent ring tells us that we are looking at a serpent that was supposed to be a dragon but never was. Now if I'm given the opportunity to convert or to allow this serpent we are seeing on the screen now to metamorphose into a dragon. There are two things I will give it. I'll give it wings. But actually, there are three things. I will give it wings, and I will give it limbs, and probably some horns, right? I'll throw on some horns here and there. So if the serpent is supposed to evolve and become a dragon, then it means that it will start showing evidence of these wings and the horns, as I put it. And to be fair, this is an idea that a very good friend of mine, let me put it that way, who I have a lot of interactions with on Discord, shares with me. He's actually called his Discord name is Ego Death. So yeah, shout out to Ego Death, who actually also brought this to my attention, and we had a conversation about this. Ego Death and I actually will be working on a video that will actually put all this together and even add more information to show the strong connection between the dragons and the serpents and their evolution. But bottom line, there is some connection between the dragons and the serpents, where the serpents, I believe, were supposed to ascend or evolve. Well, did all of them ascend? For now, my answer is no. I believe no. Some did ascend and some didn't. Here is what I was saying about Messmer's winged serpent. So you see that this red serpent has the wings on it, right? And this is the serpent that keeps the base serpent in check. So now Messmer is gonna let out the base serpent, and when he does that, I want you to take note of something. I'm gonna pause here. All of a sudden, the red serpent has transformed. Yeah, magma worm. Thank you, GD. Yep, the magma worm. Yep. So when Messmer takes away the seal that's sealing his eye and sort of suppressing the power of the base serpent, his red serpents all of a sudden shed their skin and they have this whitish or albino and some bit of golden color or hue to them. Now that is very interesting, because remember that at this point the base serpent has taken over, and I believe that the winged serpents failed to do their work. They could not suppress the base serpent. So that's where Messmer says that tarnished, you will be taken in the jaws of the base serpent, because now we are going to deal with the base serpent. So transitioning from red to white. Now think carefully. We have seen this process or this sort of transition or these two colors play out somewhere in the game before. Of course, someone might say there are a lot of places you can identify that, but more peculiar to this subject. Do you guys remember Bale? Right? Now, it's very interesting that there was a fight between Bale and Placidusax, and we'll get to Placidusax in a bit. But Bale's arena and even the aura around him just exudes this reddish nature all over him. When you go to Placidusax, on the other hand, he has this almost silvery, whitish gold aura around him. Well, let's do a quick quiz, so to speak, and I just want to, let's chat about this, and you can put your answer in the chat. What do you think was the reason for the battle between Placidusax and Bale? Guys, drop your theories in the chat, and at this point, yes, I'm gonna take my time and we'll look at some of them, read some of them. I also share mine with you. does the game really, or does the game explicitly tell us why they really fought? If the game doesn't, what are your thoughts? What really caused this battle between these two dragons? And whilst you are putting that in the chat, I'll move on to the next slide and I'll come back and we'll look at what, or the ideas you people have. But remember the arena where we fight Prime Consort Redan, right? At the Gate of Divinity. We have this interesting pattern, right? Comprising red and gold. In a previous video, I actually connected it to the creation of the Philosopher's Stone, and I alluded that Redan was actually a Philosopher's Stone. That actually was one of my theories. I actually had two theories, and I actually made a video for one. But this is the second theory, which never made it into a video, which I'll be sharing with you. But remember, Messmer Serpents transition from red to this whitish albino-like serpents. If you want to actually see more concerning this pattern, you can even see it in the Divine Beast Arenas Theater. So here it is, right? And am I freaking out, or it looks like serpents, right? When you look at the pattern. And whilst you are thinking or pondering over my question, let me go see what you guys wrote about the reason for the fight between Bale and Placidusax. So Austin is saying that eternal struggle between order, Placid, and chaos, Bale. Nice. Gunk Gobbler, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing some of the names, please forgive me. But Bang is saying that Gunk is saying that maybe because of the human dragon hybrid. Okay. Preceptor is saying Bale is a big meanie. Okay. And RJ is saying, well, Placidusax was Elden Lord at the time, right? Yes, right. So their fight was probably about Bale rejecting the Golden Order and the supremacy of the greater world. All right. Well, thanks. If you've not shared your ideas, you can still share them. But I think we are all right. I mean, correct in their assertions or the theories we actually expounding here. It's about, yes, power struggle. It's about one, and this is the power struggle and order and chaos. But it's interesting you guys are using some of these terminologies, because remember we just talked about Messmer's transformation, the base serpent, right, and the winged serpent. The winged serpent is keeping the base serpent in check. Now remember that I said, from what we read about the covetous serpent ring, the golden serpent was supposed to ascend and become a dragon, and that will require wings. So all this gave me the impression, or has given me this working theory, that what if the fight between Bale and Placidusax is basically because of this long history of one group of dragons looking down upon the others because they didn't ascend fully. Because if you look at Placidusax looks very majestic. Well, someone might make the argument that it's because he's the Elden Lord, or he was the Elden Lord. Let's actually get back to him. He was the Elden Lord. But there's this majestic look or appearance to Placidusax as compared to our big bro here, Bale. Bale sort of looks like, excuse me to say, and even though he looks very ferocious when we fight him, he looks like some, half-baked dragon, right? Yeah, he has all the wings and blah blah blah. But if you are going to compare Placidusax to Bale, you realize that no, Placidusax and the other dragons associated with Placidusax seem to have some very interesting aura around them. So what if it's actually back to this whole concept between the white serpent and the red serpent? What if Bale is actually a descendant of the red serpent, right? And Placidusax is actually a descendant of the golden serpent. What if that is how they actually evolved? And the pattern I showed you in NELM, which has the pattern of like red and gold or white intertwining or moving around each other, like weaving in and out of each other, could actually be communicating that power struggle between these two primordial dominant forces, which are serpentine in nature, still going back to Fred and Framp, right? Those two serpents being communicated in a different way to us at this point. So that's how I interpret the battle between Placidusax and Bale. It was all about, like someone said, dominance, but the dominance is because one faction feels like they have ascended fully, right? Placidusax has it all, probably from a particular lineage of serpents, while Bale comes from another group or another generation of serpents who did not really make the full ascension, and as a result there is this everlasting or everlasting battle between these dominant forces, since one continues to look down on the other. Let me actually look at some comments. Bill is a big man. Okay, we read that one. Bill looks almost like he has the body shape of a man. Interesting. Yeah, and another thing you should also remember is that Bill and Placidusax give us, interestingly, they give us some connections, in my opinion, between Radagon and Marika. Check out their hair. Radagon is red hair, Marika is golden hair. We just look at two serpents, golden in color, or if you want the white and the red, and there's the continuous battle. And Marika does tell Radagon that, Radagon, you are yet to become a god, so you are yet to even ascend. I know there have been theories in the past that Radagon's name suggests that Radagon is a dragon, so Marika is a dragon. Well, that's a subject for another day. But I'm bringing all this to bear for us to, what I really want to communicate is that the serpents, or the primordial serpents, and in my opinion probably there are two, the red and the white, or the red and the gold, have actually been in constant battle since time memorial. And we have generations upon generation that descend from them, where one looks down upon the other. There is a couple of Satan equivalents in the game with Moog and Rykard. I will guess he is the Satan for the dragons when they were god. That's an interesting take actually, Remy. Bale does have moments where he flies, but his wings are virtually non-existent, and he is essentially rooted to the ground. Exactly, right? Exactly, RG. That's what I'm getting at. That if we, and of course this is a lot of speculation on my part, but we are allowed to speculate. If we assume that these two serpents are the origins of whatever contention we seem to find in the game between golden flame and red flame fire, where one continues to dominate and look down upon the other, I believe that a lot of the game will begin to make a lot of sense to us. Of course, this is one way of looking at the entire thing. Austin says Bill's ethereal wing in phase 2 evoke the crucible wing of The crucible wing of the crucible knights. Interesting. Yep. Yeah. And notice that Placidusa seemed to have wings made of stone. Right? That is what Placidusa is. So will we say his wings are majestic enough? Well, that's a question we will have to discuss another day. But well, more visuals, and sorry I paused for us to talk about all that, but just more visuals for us concerning the pattern on the floor of the theater where we fight the divine beast lion, right? So just bringing it there for us to see. Anyway, well, that's basically what I wanted to share with you guys.